The survey fleet drifted silently at the edge of the new star system. 10 great ships, polished silver against the black ocean of space, moved in perfect formation. Their mission was routine: chart the unexplored sector, record useful planets, and move on. The commander of the fleet, Admiral Ralek of the Concordance, sat inside his command chamber, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams projected above his desk. At first the readings looked ordinary: another rocky world, another gas giant, a belt of frozen asteroids. Nothing unusual. Then the sensors focused on the 3rd planet. The chamber fell into silence as the computer finished its analysis. The screen glowed with a single classification. Class 15, Maximum Hazard World. The word sent a chill through every officer present. Class ratings were given to planets based on their danger to intelligent life. A Class 8 world was already a nightmare, lethal. Storms, poisonous air, hostile predators. Class 10 was thought nearly impossible for long-term survival. But Class 15, no known species had ever claimed one. Admiral Ralek leaned forward. "Confirm the data." The sensor officer, a slim Cathari with translucent skin, whispered nervously. "Confirmed, Admiral. Atmosphere highly unstable. Oxygen rich but mixed with toxins. Seismic activity at extreme levels. Tidal forces from 3 moons cause constant ocean upheavals. Storm systems span entire continents. The biosphere is aggressive. Large predators, venomous flora, endless competition for survival. Estimated survival time for most concordant species, less than 1 day." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Planets like this were recorded in archives but rarely visited. They were symbols of chaos, places where even the strongest war species would not last. "Mark it as uninhabitable," one officer said quickly. "There is no reason to remain here." But before the admiral could respond, another voice cut in from the communication station. "Admiral, I'm detecting something else." The chamber turned to look. The officer's hands trembled as they worked the console. "Radio transmissions, sir. Structured, repeating patterns, multiple frequencies." Ralek's lower eyes narrowed. "Interference. From the storms." "No, Admiral," the officer said. "These are artificial, intelligent. A civilization is broadcasting from the surface." The room fell utterly silent. That was impossible. A civilization could not exist on a Class 15 world. Survival alone should have been beyond reach. And yet, the signals were there, whispering through the storms. Admiral Ralek rose from his seat. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "Prepare a landing team. We are going down." The descent was perilous. The shuttle rocked violently as it pierced the turbulent skies. Lightning crackled against its shielding, painting the cockpit in blue fire. Wind screamed like living things, slamming against the vessel. Even the experienced pilots muttered prayers under their breath. Admiral Ralek stood behind them, steady despite the chaos. His gaze never left the planet below. Vast oceans roared with endless waves clawing against jagged coastlines. Mountains thrust upward like the teeth of some giant beast, their slopes blackened with fresh volcanic scars. Forests sprawled across valleys, but they were not peaceful green havens. They were tangled battlegrounds where colossal beasts hunted and smaller creatures fled in swarms. This was not a world that welcomed life. It was a world that fought against it, and yet in the middle of this nightmare something extraordinary appeared. The shuttle broke through the clouds and the team saw it. Gleaming lights scattered across the land. Not the wildfires of nature, but ordered clusters of illumination. Roads, grids, buildings, cities. "Impossible," one officer whispered. The humans had built civilization here. The shuttle landed on a platform of dark metal reinforced with strange alloys. Waiting for them was a group of tall figures, humans. They were not heavily armored like soldiers from other empires. Instead, they wore simple protective suits, light and flexible, as if the storms and toxins were nothing more than a mild nuisance. Their faces were uncovered, revealing eyes sharp and curious with expressions not of fear but of interest. Admiral Ralek stepped forward, his delegation behind him. He expected to see desperation in the humans, perhaps relief at contact, perhaps pleading for aid. That was how most species would behave if stranded on such a hostile planet. Instead, the human leader smiled. "Welcome," she said in a calm, steady voice. "We weren't expecting visitors." Her words were simple, but to the aliens they were baffling. How could anyone speak with such ease in this place? The Admiral bowed slightly in greeting. "I am Rahalek, of the Galactic Concordance. We did not expect to find anyone alive on a Class 15 world." The human leader tilted her head, amused. "Alive? Admiral, we are not merely alive. We are at home." The delegation was guided through the city. To the aliens' eyes, it was astonishing. The streets were alive with activity. Children played, near fountains that recycled stormwater. Markets bustled with trade. Workers repaired structures designed to sway with earthquakes instead of breaking. Towers reached toward the sky, equipped with lightning rods that captured and stored the energy of the storms. Everywhere they looked, the aliens saw signs not of desperation, but of adaptation. A storm rumbled overhead, thunder shaking the ground. The humans barely noticed. A few adjusted their clothing, children pointed at the lightning with laughter, but life continued as though nothing unusual had happened. One of the officers whispered to the Admiral, "How do they endure this?" The Admiral did not answer. He too was trying to understand. Later, in a great hall carved into the side of a mountain, the human leaders met with the delegation. Food was offered, strange but safe to eat. Admiral Rahalek studied the humans carefully. Their eyes carried the weight of experience, but their posture was relaxed, almost casual, as if they had nothing to fear from the hostile world outside. Finally, he spoke. "Why would your people choose to remain here? This planet is the deadliest we have ever seen." The human leader leaned forward, her voice steady. "Because challenge is not something we run from, Admiral. It is something we master." Her words hung in the air like a spark. The aliens were silent, but in their minds 1,000 questions rose. Who were these people? How had they not only endured but thrived in such conditions? For the first time in many years, Admiral Rahalek felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, but respect. And perhaps deep within a flicker of unease. For if a species could call a Class 15 Deathworld their home, what else might they be capable of? The storm outside raged with thunder and fire, but inside the mountain hall the atmosphere was calm. The humans and the alien delegation sat across from each other at a long table made of dark stone polished until it shone like glass. Strange, glowing plants hung from the walls, casting soft light over the room. Admiral Rahalek of the Concordance studied the humans. He had seen hundreds of species in his long career, beings with scales, shells, feathers, and fur. Many had been brilliant, many had been powerful, but none had ever dared to live on a Class 15 world. Yet here the humans were, speaking with confidence, offering food, and acting as if this deadly planet were only a mild challenge. His officer leaned close and whispered, "Admiral, I do not understand them. They should be terrified, desperate, for rescue." Rahalek did not answer. He was thinking the same thing. The human leader, a woman with steady eyes, spoke again. "You traveled far to find us. I imagine you have many questions." The Admiral inclined his head. "Indeed, the Council believed no civilization could exist here, and yet you thrive. We must understand how this is possible." The woman's lips curved in a faint smile. "Then walk with us. See it for yourself, the UI." Next morning, the storm clouds broke for a short time. A pale sun shone through, casting golden light over the jagged mountains. It was not peaceful. Winds still tore across the valleys, but it was calmer than before. The humans led the delegation out into the city. It was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The buildings were not fragile. They were strong, built from dark stone and reinforced alloys. Some were carved into the cliffs themselves, while others rose like towers with wide bases and flexible supports. Instead of fearing earthquakes, the humans had designed their city to bend and sway, absorbing the planet's violent shaking. Children played in courtyards, their laughter echoing between the walls. They chased each other while a lightning storm flashed on the horizon. The aliens watched in disbelief. On their worlds, a storm of such size would drive everyone underground. Here, it was a normal backdrop to daily life. One concordance officer whispered, "They act as if danger is nothing more than weather." A human walking beside him heard and chuckled. "Danger is weather here, and weather is only another puzzle to solve." The group moved through the markets. Stalls were filled with strange fruits grown in soil rich with volcanic ash. The air carried the smell of roasted meat from creatures the aliens could barely identify, beasts with armored hides and too many teeth. Yet the humans did not act like prey hiding from predators. They hunted the predators, farmed the dangerous plants, and turned every hazard into a resource. One stall sold bottled liquids that shimmered with a faint blue glow. A human trader explained, "Extract from storm flora, poison to most creatures, but we learned how to refine it into medicine. Saves lives during sickness." Another stall displayed tools forged from the bones of enormous beasts. "Stronger than metal in some cases," the seller said proudly. The delegation began to realize the truth. Nothing on this planet went to waste. Every challenge was transformed into strength. Later, the humans guided them to the edge of the city, where vast towers rose into the clouds. Lightning struck their tips, sending energy crackling down into great storage banks. One of the human engineers explained, "We used to fear the storms. Now they power our cities. What once threatened us now feeds us." The aliens stared in awe. Most advanced civilizations relied on solar, fusion, or rare elements. But here, on a world where storms never ceased, humanity had harnessed the chaos itself. Admiral Ralek felt something stir within him. It was rare, almost forgotten. Respect. At midday, the delegation was taken to a school. Inside, children sat in circles, learning not only words and numbers but also survival skills. Maps of the dangerous terrain lined the walls. Models of creatures stood on tables, labeled with their strengths and weaknesses. A teacher explained, "Our children are taught early how to understand the world around them. Not to fear it, but to study it, master it." The alien officers exchanged looks. On their worlds, children were protected, sheltered from harm. Here, children were prepared from the start to face the storms, the predators, and the shifting ground. The Admiral thought quietly, "They are not just surviving here, they are training for something greater." In the evening, the delegation returned to the Great Hall. The humans offered a meal, dishes of roasted meat, baked roots, and fruits with flavors sharp and sweet. To the aliens, the food was unusual, but not unpleasant. Conversation flowed more freely now. The aliens asked questions, and the humans answered. "How did you come here?" an officer asked. The human leader leaned back, her eyes thoughtful. "Our ancestors were explorers. They saw this world and did not turn away. Many believed it could not be done. But they said, if life can exist anywhere, it can exist here. And so we stayed." "Were you not afraid?" the Admiral asked. Her answer was quiet, but firm. "Of course we were afraid. Fear is natural. But fear is also a teacher. It shows you what must be faced. Step by step we learned. Step by step we built. And fear became strength." The hall was silent for a long moment. Finally, one of the younger alien officers spoke. "But why remain? With your skill, you could have left. You could have found a gentler world." The human's smile returned. "Gentle worlds teach little. This world taught us everything." That night, as the storm returned, Admiral Ralek stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Lightning lit the horizon. Winds howled across the cliffs. Yet below him, the city glowed with life, warm and steady. A human guard stood nearby, watching the storm with calm eyes. Rylek spoke to him, quietly. "Does this never end? These storms, these dangers?" The guard shrugged. "It never ends. But neither do we. Ralek turned back toward the city, and for the first time he understood. This was not just survival. This was a declaration. Humanity had looked at a world where no other species dared set foot, and chosen to build a home. The Admiral knew then that this encounter would change the Concordance forever, because the question was no longer how humans had survived here. The question was, if they could master a Class 15 Deathworld, what could they do anywhere else in the galaxy? The days after first contact passed quickly. The Concordance delegation remained in the city, studying everything they could. Admiral Ralek had ordered his officers to watch carefully, to record, and above all, to learn. At first, the aliens had expected to find signs of hidden suffering, shortages of food, crumbling buildings, exhausted faces. But the longer they stayed, the more that expectation dissolved. Everywhere they looked, humanity was not only alive, but busy, creative, and, most surprising of all, calm. On the second morning, a great storm swept through the region. The sky turned black with rolling clouds, and thunder shook the mountains. Bolts of lightning fell so close that the alien officers flinched. "Admiral, we must retreat to the shuttle," one officer urged. "These storms are lethal," but the humans did not run. Instead, they moved with practiced ease. Large shutters sealed over windows. Streets were cleared in minutes, with citizens working together in teams. Children were guided indoors, while workers secured towers with reinforced locks. The aliens watched as the city transformed itself into a fortress of safety, not through panic, but through calm organization. One human engineer turned to the delegation and said with a grin, "This is a small one. You should see the real storms." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. To them, this was a disaster. To humans, it was routine. Later, when the skies cleared, the delegation followed a group of farmers to the edge of the valley. The soil here was black, warm, and full of volcanic minerals. The aliens expected to see crops struggling in such a harsh place. Instead, they saw fields of tall grain swaying in the hot wind, orchards bearing fruit, and carefully managed irrigation channels that carried water down from the mountains. The farmers worked with strange tools that adjusted themselves depending on the soil density. When an earthquake shook the ground, the workers barely paused. They adjusted the channels, checked the supports, and continued. One alien officer whispered, "Even the earth itself tries to destroy them." A human farmer overheard and laughed. "Destroy us? No, the earth feeds us, you just have to listen to it." The admiral asked, "But how do you keep crops alive through the storms, the ash, the shifting ground?" The farmer wiped his brow and answered simply, "We plant again, and again, and again. The earth takes, but it also gives. We only have to learn its rhythm." The aliens stood in silence. Their own agricultural worlds would have collapsed under such punishment. Yet here, humans had made a harvest. That evening, the delegation visited the city's engineering halls. They expected to see borrowed alien technology, scavenged relics, or desperate inventions. Instead, they saw workshops alive with creativity. Human engineers built machines designed not to fight against the planet, but to work with it. Bridges swayed like trees in the wind. Dams shifted their shape when the river surged. Energy collectors bent like sails to catch the storms. An alien officer studied a tall tower braced with layered supports. "This design should collapse," he muttered. The chief engineer overheard him and shook her head. "Not collapse, flex. The planet moves, so our buildings move too. A stiff thing breaks, a flexible thing survives." The admiral thought about those words for a long time. On the fourth day, the humans invited the aliens to join a hunting expedition. At first, the admiral refused. He considered it too dangerous, but the humans insisted, saying, "You cannot understand us until you see how we face the land itself." And so, the delegation followed. They traveled into the dense forests where massive beasts moved among the trees. One such creature appeared, a towering predator with armored skin and eyes that glowed in the dark. The aliens froze in fear. To them, this was death itself. But the humans did not panic. They moved in groups, coordinating silently with hand signals. Some distracted the beast with sound while others circled behind. Spears tipped with energy crackled, nets woven from special alloys tightened, and within minutes, the massive predator fell. The aliens stood speechless. A young human hunter turned to them and said cheerfully, "We will use everything. The hide for armor, the bones for tools, the meat for food." The Admiral finally asked the question that burned in his mind. "Do you not fear these creatures? Do you not hate them?" The hunter shook his head. "We respect them. They make us stronger. Every time we face them, we learn more about ourselves." As the days passed, the Admiral noticed something else. It was not only the adults who carried this resilience. One afternoon, he saw a group of children playing outside after the storm. They were building small shelters from scraps of wood and stone, racing to see who could make the strongest one. When a sudden gust of wind knocked one over, the child laughed and began rebuilding immediately. The teacher nearby explained, "We teach them early. Failure is not shame here. Failure is the beginning of strength." The Admiral thought of his own people, where mistakes were punished and weakness was hidden. Here, mistakes were teachers. Here, weakness was transformed into strength. By the end of the week, the delegation's reports grew thick with data. But the Admiral knew that data alone could not explain what he had seen. One evening, he gathered his officers. The storm outside painted the sky in purple light. "You have all seen it now," he said. "The humans do not fight this world with brute force. They do not bend it to their will with technology alone. They survive because they change, because they refuse to stop learning. That is their strength." The officers listened in silence. One finally said, "Admiral, if they can thrive here, what will they do on easier worlds?" No one answered, but the thought hung heavy in the room. The next morning, the human leader met with the Admiral again. "You have watched us," she said. "What have you learned?" The Admiral studied her carefully before answering. "I have learned," he said slowly, "that where others see destruction, you see possibility. See, where others give up, you begin again. You endure because you refuse to surrender." The woman nodded. "That is humanity. We do not claim to be the strongest, or the fastest, or the most clever. But we will always rise again. That is enough." The Admiral bowed his head in respect. He understood now. Humanity was not just another species in the galaxy. Humanity was something else, a force that could not be measured by numbers alone. And as the storm rumbled outside, Admiral Raleigh felt a thought take root in his mind. Perhaps the galaxy has not yet seen the true measure of resilience. Perhaps it begins here, with them. When the Concordance delegation returned to their fleet, they carried not only reports and recordings, but also something heavier, a sense of unease. The humans had welcomed them with calm smiles, had shared food and stories, but their existence on a Class 15 Deathworld was something the officers could not forget. Admiral Raleigh stood in the command chamber, watching as the fleet transmitted the discovery to the wider council. The great message carried images of the storm-filled skies, the massive predators, the flexible towers, and the human cities glowing in the darkness. For hours, silence answered. Then, across the galactic network, replies began to arrive. The first voices were of disbelief. "This is false," declared one senator. "No one lives on a Class 15 world. This is an error in classification." But the data was overwhelming. Other species, when shown the recordings, could not deny what they saw. Soon disbelief turned to argument. Some leaders spoke with awe. "If they can survive there, imagine what they can teach us." Humanity could change everything. Others spoke with fear. "If they thrive in such a place, what happens when they expand? What happens when they turn their strength outward?" The galaxy was unsettled. Humanity had become a mystery that no one could ignore. Meanwhile, the humans continued their daily lives, seemingly unconcerned with the ripples spreading across the stars. In the city beneath the storms, Admiral Raleigh sat with the human leader once more. "The council is divided," he admitted. "Some wish to welcome you, Others see you as a threat. The woman nodded as if she had expected it. Fear is natural. When something new arrives, fear always walks beside it. Ralek studied her. Are you not worried that they may move against you? That they may try to control you? Her expression was calm. Admiral, we live with storms that shake mountains and beasts that could swallow us whole. If another power comes to test us, we will treat them the same way we treat the storms. We will endure. The Concordance decided to send gifts, hoping to gain the humans' loyalty. Ships arrived carrying advanced technology, fusion cores, medical machines, starship engines. In most encounters, such gifts were treasured beyond measure. But the humans surprised them again. They studied each device with interest, but when the Council suggested that humanity depend on this technology, the human leader shook her head. We thank you, she said politely, but we cannot build our future on things we did not create. If we rely too much on your machines, we will forget how to solve problems ourselves. And forgetting how to endure would be worse than any storm. The delegation was astonished. No other species had ever refused such offers. One officer muttered, "They do not act like a desperate people. They act like equals." Ralek, listening, felt a slow understanding grow. They were equals, perhaps more. But not all in the galaxy were content to leave humanity in peace. Whispers spread among the warlike empires, species that had long measured strength in conquest. One such empire, the Draxian Dominion, sent scouts to the human world. The Draxians believed that the humans were fragile underneath their bold words. A species cannot live on a Class 15 world, their commander sneered. This is a trick. We will break them easily. They landed on the far side of the planet expecting quick victory. Instead, the storms tore at their ships. The ground shook beneath them and the predators attacked without fear. The humans did not even need to fight directly. The planet itself fought on their side. Only a handful of Draxians returned to their empire, carrying stories of endless storms, endless danger, and people who walked through it all as if they were unshakable. The Dominion fell silent after that. Back in the human city, Admiral Ralek saw the change in his own officers. At first they had looked at humans with disbelief, then with curiosity. Now they looked with respect and a shadow of fear. One night during another storm, he overheard two officers whispering, "If they can tame this world, what stops them from taming ours?" "Perhaps nothing," the other replied. The Admiral did not rebuke them. He could not, for he too felt that same unease. The next day, he spoke with the human leader privately. They stood on a balcony watching lightning strike the tall towers that captured its energy. "Do you plan to leave this world?" he asked. The woman's gaze followed the storm. "Someday, not because we must escape, but because we choose to explore. But wherever we go, we will carry this world inside us. Its storms have shaped us. We will not forget that." Ralek nodded slowly. He believed her. Humanity's strength was not in their weapons, nor in their machines, but in their spirit. A spirit that refused to bow, even before the deadliest planet the Council had ever recorded. Word spread further across the galaxy. Some species began to admire humanity, seeing them as teachers of endurance. Others whispered warnings, afraid of what such resilience could mean in war. The Council debated endlessly. Should humanity be welcomed as allies or watched as potential threats? But far from those debates, on the stormy world, humans continued, as they always had, rebuilding after quakes, harvesting after storms, laughing even when the ground trembled. They had no time for fear, because life demanded action every day. Finally, the Concordance asked the humans one last question. Why? Why choose such a world? Why remain when so many other planets were easier? The human leader's answer was simple. Because here, every day reminds us of what we are. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we do not stop. And if we can thrive here, then we can thrive anywhere. The Admiral bowed his head. He had traveled across the galaxy, seen empires rise and fall, but never had he heard words that carried such weight. In that moment he knew. Fear was natural, but respect was stronger. Humanity had earned both. And soon, the galaxy would have to decide which one to follow. The storm that night was stronger than any the Concordance delegation had seen before. Lightning split the skies again and again, until the horizon looked like it was aflame. The mountains groaned as earthquakes rolled beneath them, and the winds howled across the valleys like a chorus of beasts. From the windows of the Concordance command ship, the alien officers stared down in fear. "Nothing can live through that," one whispered. But far below, in the city carved into stone and steel, the lights still burned. Humans moved through. The streets, their shapes small against the fury of the world, yet steady, unbroken. Admiral Ralek stood silently, watching. He had seen many worlds destroyed by forces less powerful than this storm. He had seen whole empires falter when their skies darkened or their lands shook. Yet here was a people who faced it every day and did not bow. He understood now why the galaxy was afraid. Humanity was not a threat because of weapons or numbers or technology. Humanity was a threat because they refused to be broken. The council called for a gathering. Delegates from dozens of empires, states, and free worlds assembled in a grand hall on a neutral station. The air buzzed with tension. At the center of it all stood the humans, 5 of them chosen to represent their world. The hall erupted in debate. "They are dangerous," cried one delegate. "If they can thrive on a Deathworld, they can thrive anywhere. Who will stop them if they spread?" "They are a lesson, not a danger," argued another. "We can learn from them. They show us that the impossible is not truly impossible. They will become conquerors. They will become teachers." The voices clashed like weapons in the air. At last the human leader raised her hand. Her voice was calm but strong enough to silence the room. "We did not come here to conquer," she said. "We did not come to beg. We came because you found us. And now you must decide what you believe." The council demanded to know more. And so the humans spoke. They told stories of their history, of times when their people had faced famine, plague, war, and storms that destroyed whole cities. They told of how they rebuilt. Not once, not twice, but always. They spoke of explorers who crossed oceans of fire and ice, of builders who carved homes into mountains, of thinkers who turned fear into wisdom. "We are not without weakness," the leader admitted. "We bleed, we break, we grieve. But what defines us is not our pain. It is that we rise again after it. Every time. That is what makes us who we are." The hall was silent. Even the harshest voices had no answer. Later, after the meeting, Admiral Ralek walked with the human leader through the quiet corridors of the station. "You realize," he said, "many will never trust you. They will watch. They will fear. Some may even try to strike at you." The woman smiled faintly. "That is the way of life, Admiral. Even on our world, some storms break stronger than others. We do not control that. What we control is how we stand when the storm comes." Her words stayed with him. Months passed. Humanity was officially accepted into the Concordance. Not all agreed, but enough saw the value. The humans were given a seat among the stars, though many expected them to falter once they left their dangerous home. They did not falter. On distant mining colonies where quakes shook the ground, it was humans who rebuilt the fastest. On frontier worlds where predators stalked the night, it was humans who kept the watch. On stations where systems failed, it was humans who adapted, improvising solutions when others froze in panic. At first, other species watched with suspicion, then with curiosity, then slowly with respect. One story spread quickly. On a frozen outpost near the galactic rim, a reactor failure threatened to destroy the colony. The engineers panicked, unsure how to fix it. The human worker on the station simply said, "We'll figure it out," and began working with whatever tools were nearby. Others followed his example. Hours later, the reactor was stable. When asked why he was not afraid, the human answered, "Because fear does not fix anything. Action does." That single phrase became a saying across several systems, Another story came from a world where floods destroyed settlements. The alien colonists wailed that all was lost. The humans among them simply began building rafts, carrying children to safety, guiding elders through the water. When asked later why they did not despair, one woman answered, "We have seen worse. We know that despair builds nothing. Hands do." That too became a saying. The galaxy began to change. Not all at once, but slowly. Species that had once hidden from storms began to study them. Societies that had feared failure began to treat it as a lesson. Children on worlds far from Earth began to play games of rebuilding, not only of winning. The human lesson was spreading, but with respect also came caution. The warlike empires still whispered, "If they can endure anything, what happens if they decide to fight?" The Concordance debated this question for years. Some believed humanity must always be watched. Others believed humanity was the proof that life could always adapt, even in the harshest conditions. In the end, the galaxy learned to balance both fear and respect. Humanity was neither worshipped nor hated. They were understood as what they truly were, survivors who could never be counted out. Admiral Ra'alek retired years later, but he never forgot his first sight of the human world. He often told younger officers the same story. "We found a Class 15 Deathworld," he would begin. "A place no one should survive. But when we looked closer, we saw cities, lights, and laughter beneath the storms. We saw people who turned danger into strength, who refused to bow, who made the impossible possible, and we learned that strength is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to rise again when fear has done its worst." Those who heard him carried the words with them. Back on their storm-filled world, the humans continued as always. They did not seek to rule the galaxy, but they did not fear it either. They built ships, explored, traded, and shared, but always at the core they remembered the lesson their world had taught them, that storms will come, that fear will rise, that loss will strike, but also that life endures. And so the story spread. Across the stars, whispered in markets, recorded in archives, told to children before they slept. There was a planet so fierce, so wild, that no one believed life could exist there. The galaxy called it a death world. But when they looked closer, they found humanity had already made it their home, and the galaxy learned that sometimes the deadliest places are where the strongest lessons are born.